Welcome to Born to be a Sports Agent, where I deliver legal and contract insight for sports professionals navigating hiring, firing, injury, and representation. Today we have JRW Law Firm, and they are going to be talking about a certain case in women's soccer. So I'm going to now let them go and let them introduce themselves and tell them about what they're going to talk about today.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome back to Beyond the Scoreboard, the podcast where we explore the legal, cultural, and social issues shaping the world of sports. I'm Jennifer.
I'm Wilner.
And I'm Raleigh. Today, we're discussing one of the most important sports law cases of the last decade, Morgan v. United States Soccer Federation. The lawsuit brought national attention to equal pay in sports, gender discrimination, and the treatment of women athletes at the highest levels of competition.
And honestly, even people who don't follow soccer probably did something about this case. They became big in sports. It sparked conversations about labor rights, sexism, media coverage, and the value society places on women's athletics.
The lawsuit was filed by members of the United States women's national soccer team. Players like Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe, Carly Lloyd, Becky Sauber, and others against the United States Soccer Federation, often referred to as the USSF.
The players alleged gender discrimination under the Equal Pay Act and Title IV of the Civil Rights Act. They argued that despite generating tremendous success on the field, they were paid less and treated worse than the United States men's national soccer.
And when we talk about success, we mean major success. The women's national team has won multiple World Cups, Olympic medals, and consistently has outperformed the men's national team for competitive.
So today we're just gonna kind of break down the facts of the case, the legal arguments, the court's ruling, the eventual settlement, and more so the broader challenges that women face in sports today.
We'll also discuss why this case mattered culturally and whether it changed the landscape for women athletes. Let's start with the background. In March of 2019, 28 members of the U.S. women's national team filed a lawsuit in federal court in California against the U.S. Soccer Federation.
The lawsuit centered on allegations of gender discrimination in pay and working conditions. The players claim that the federation systematically treated them less favorably than the men's national team.
And what made this case especially compelling to the public was the timing. The lawsuit was filed right before the 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup, the tournament that U.S. Premier went on and won.
So while the legal battle was happening in court, the team was simultaneously dominating on the world stage.
The women's team argued that despite their extraordinary success, they earned less compensation than the men's team, even though the men had not achieved comparable international results.
The contest became central to the public discussion. The women had 4 World Cup titles, Olympic gold medals, and huge fan support. Meanwhile, the men's team struggled internationally and even failed to qualify for the 2018 FIFA World Cup.
The players also alleged unequal treatment in travel arrangements, hotel accommodations, training support, staffing, and playing services.
One of the major issues actually involved artificial turf. The women argued that they were often required to play on artificial turf, while the men were more frequently allowed to play on natural grass, which a lot of athletes believe was safer and more consistent.
And that issue tied into broader concerns about respect and also investments into women's sports. Many athletes felt women's competitions were treated as they held secondary events.
Now let's talk about the legal claims themselves. The players sued under 2 major laws, the Equal Pay Act and Title VII.
The Equal Pay Act prohibits employers from paying employees differently for substantially equal work based on sex. To succeed, the players had to show that they performed equal work under similar working conditions, but received unequal compensation.
And Title VII, on the other hand, prohibits discrimination based on sex and more broadly.
The Federation defended itself by arguing that the women and men had negotiated different collective bargaining.
That became a critical issue in the litigation. The Federation argued that the women intentionally negotiated a compensation structure that provided more guaranteed salary protections and benefits, whereas the men accepted a more bonus-heavy pay system.
So essentially, the Federation's argument was basically the pay structures were different because the union bargained for different systems.
Exactly. The women's team had negotiated for guaranteed salaries, health insurance, maternity protections, and other stability focused.
And this distinction is actually what became legally significant because the court later focused heavily on the overall compensation received under those systems.
Now, let's move into the court's ruling because this is where the case becomes controversial.
In 2020, Judge R. Gary Glossner issued a major ruling granting summary judgment against the women's team on their Equal Pay Act claim.
And that really shocked a lot of people.
The judge essentially concluded that, taken as a whole, the women's team had actually earned more both cumulatively and on a per game basis than the men's team during the relevant period.
The court relied heavily on the total compensation figures. The ruling stated that the women had rejected a proposal similar to the men's play structure and instead negotiated for a different system with guaranteed compensation.
Many critics argue that the analysis missed the data picture.
Right. Critics said the court focused too narrowly on aggregate compensation without fully considering how difficult it was for women to earn equivalent bonuses out.
There was also criticism that the women had to win far more games and achieve greater success in order to earn similar or greater compensation.
And that point became central in public discourse because essentially people were arguing that women had to perform at an elite level consistently just to keep pace financially with the men's team.
The players and supporters also argued that equal pay should not depend solely on total earnings, but on equal rights and equal treatment.
One important note was that the judge did allow the women's claims regarding working conditions to proceed.
So the woman lost the core equal pay claim at that stage, but parts of the discrimination case still survived.
Public reaction to the ruling was intense.
Very intense, in fact. Many fans, athletes, advocacy groups viewed the decision as unfair and disconnected from the realities that women athletes face today.
Even outside soccer, a lot of athletes from basketball, tennis, hockey, and track and field spoke publicly about systemic inequality in sports.
And this case became symbolic of broader frustration over how women's labor and accomplishments are valued.
And it also highlighted the fact that compensation structures in many industries like basketball, soccer can mask inequality. So if women have fewer opportunities, smaller prize pools, or less institutional support, aggregate numbers alone may not tell us the full story.
Exactly. So this kind of really highlights the legal analysis and the public moral analysis were not necessarily the same.
Eventually, the parties reached a settlement.
In 2022, the U.S. Soccer Foundation agreed to settle the lawsuit for $24 million.
And more importantly, the Federation also agreed to equalize pay structures between both the men's and women's national teams moving forward.
That was huge. Particularly because it included equal sharing of FIFA World Cup prize fund.
Which is extremely important because FIFA historically awarded dramatically different prize amounts for the men's and women's tournaments.
The settlement included flat pay for players and commitments for future investments in women's soccer.
The Federation publicly described the agreement as a major step toward equality.
And while many people celebrated the settlement, others noted that broader structural issues still remained intact.
Because equal pay in one federation does not equally solve inequality across all sports.
Women athletes across the world still face major disparities in funding, sponsorship, facilities, media exposure, and professional opportunities.
Let's expand beyond soccer and talk about the broader challenges women experience.
And one of the biggest issues today is media coverage. Historically, women's sports have received dramatically less coverage than men's sports.
And that reduced coverage actually affects everything else: sponsorships, television revenue, public recognition, and investments.
There's often a cycle where organizations claim women's sports generate less revenue, but they simultaneously invest less in marketing and exposure.
Which is an issue because if you don't promote games, provide prime broadcasting slots, or market athletes effectively, it becomes harder, to build the audiences.
Another challenge is pay disparity. Even elite women athletes often earn far less than male athletes in comparable sports.
And sometimes the disparities are extreme.
Women's basketball players are a great example. Many women's National Basketball Association players have historically needed to play overseas during the off season because salaries alone weren't insufficient.
And beyond compensation, women athletes frequently deal with unequal travel accommodations, training resources, staffing support, and mental resources.
There are also social pressures that male athletes often do not face in the same.
Yeah, definitely. I think women athletes are often scrutinized for appearance, personality, motherhood, or other emotional expression in ways that many male athletes are not.
Maternity protections specifically are another important issue. Historically, some women athletes lost sponsorships or even financial support during pregnancy.
That issue became more visible after athletes like Allison Felix spoke publicly about losing compensation protections.
That conversation pushed companies and sports organizations to reconsider maternity policies that were in place.
There's also the issue of leadership representation. Men still occupy a majority of coaching, executive, and ownership positions in professional sports organizations.
Which means many decisions affecting women athletes are still being made in spaces where women are underrepresented.
And the representation matters because it affects not only priorities, but also funding decisions, workplace culture, and long-term investment as well.
Another challenge involves stereotypes about athleticism and marketability.
For decades, women's sports were treated as less exciting or less commercially viable, despite evidence showing strong audience engagement when women's sports were properly funded.
And now thankfully we started to see a change recently. Women's basketball, soccer, tennis, volleyball, and college athletics have seen huge increases in not only attendance, but also leadership as well.
But even with that growth, a lot of inequality still persists.
And that's why the Morgan case mattered beyond just soccer. It forced institutions and brands to confront larger questions about fairness and value. As we wrap up, let's talk about the legacy of Morgan v. USWNT.
I think for me personally, the biggest impact was cultural. This case changed how people talk about women's sports.
I agree. I think even though the legal outcome was mixed, the lawsuit created an enormous public pressure and ultimately contributed to institutional changes.
I think it also demonstrated the power athletes can have when they collectively advocate for workplace rights.
And it also shows younger athletes as well that they can challenge systems they believe are fair.
From a legal perspective, the case also highlighted limitations within existing anti-discrimination frameworks. It raised difficult questions about how courts evaluate compensation systems and labor negotiations.
At the same time, the settlement showed that public advocacy, collective bargaining, and social pressure can sometimes produce results even when litigation will stop.
And we continue to see the effects today on conversations about equal pay, investments, maternity protections, media coverage, and gender equity continue across all sports.
The case became part of a broader movement demanding that women athletes receive the same respect, resources, and opportunities as men.
And ultimately, that conversation is about more than just sports. It's about workplace equality, representation, and how society values women's contributions.
Exactly. So as we wrap up, I think it's important for us to really take a moment to consider how women have always been in a position where they have to challenge, systems to be able to gain access to resources that have been granted to others fairly easily. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of our podcast, and we hope you guys subscribe and follow us for future episodes.
That's all for today's episode of Beyond the Scoreboard.
Thanks for listening to Born to Be a Sports Agent, where we discuss relevant legal issues, contract issues, and discuss representation for everyone in sports. This is Jill McBride Baxter, and my core values are protection, advocacy, and trust. If you are looking for representation and you need someone to take you where you can't take yourself, please go to my website at jillmcbridebaxter.com or email me at jillbaxter@me.com and set up a meeting for a free consultation. Thanks for listening. Have a fantastic week and good luck in sports.